sea and coast of the Southern Baltic Sea are characterized by a unique landscape with diverse habitats: open sea, cliff coasts, wetlands with unspoiled beaches, and bottom-type bays and lagoons. Therefore, various landscape protection and nature conservation areas have been established. There are important sanctuaries and resting places for many bird species, but coastal areas provide also important spawning and nursery habitats for fish such as herring. In future, these areas require our attention and protection. Herring is one of the most important pelagic species in the Baltic Sea. It has not only a crucial role in the food chain, since it is an important prey for many predatory fish. Herring catches are also essential for the livelihood of many small-scale fisheries. Since centuries, it also has a long tradition as food fish and commodity in the southern Baltic region. Every year, large herring schools migrate to the shallow coastal waters to spawn and reproduce. That's the time when celebrations in honor of the herring take place all over the southern Baltic region. Over the last few decades, the herring stocks have substantially declined in almost every part of the southern Baltic, while reasons for this alarming decrease remain mostly unknown.
We have a lot of various uses in the coastal area competing for the space. In the South Baltic area, that are shipping, dredging, recreation, coastal protection, energy supply, and so on.
I think at the moment eutrophication is one of the major threats, because this is really still at the high level. Even we are doing a lot to combat against eutrophication.
Various ecological parameters such as shallow water, water temperature, and especially certain macrophytes are essential for herring spawning and reproduction. But the rising anthropogenic pressures on the coastal spawning areas are threatening.
They need the bottom where they can lay eggs. So it's like microphytes, immersed plants, or hard bottom structure, different hard bottom structure. So as long as we have bottom type, kind of sandy, rocky, with plants, it's going to be okay.
Or
as
even
far as we are going,
construction, that's fine as
almost
well.
everything, wooden construction.
Because the ecological conditions which determine successful spawning are increasingly altered by humans, the importance of a more sustainable management of coastal zones and spawning grounds is growing.
There is a lack of awareness among different political stakeholders and stakeholder groups regarding coastal spawning areas. There is no shared understanding of coastal zone management in general. And there is also the precautionary approach that is often neglected in policymaking. And not new, but also a problem in our case study areas was the lack of communication between political decision makers, scientific institutions, and the general public.
To analyze how coastal spawning grounds are currently managed and to develop options and recommendations for more sustainable management was one of the aims of the transnational project Herring. Work was done in 3 case study areas, one in Sweden, the Blekinge archipelago and the coast of Skåne. There was one in Germany, the Greifswald-Bodden, the most important spawning area for the western Baltic spring spawning herring, and one case study in the Vistula lagoon, coordinated by the Polish partner. First, the ecological status and the anthropogenic impact were analyzed. That was mainly done by literature research and monitoring programs.
We were sampling eggs along the archipelago of Blekinge and along the east coast of Skåne. We found eggs in scattered places, and this confirms what the previous studies have shown as well, that the herring spawn there.
The policy framework and the management structures were analyzed via interviews and roundtable discussions with local and regional stakeholders in all 3 case studies. At the project symposium organized by EUCC Germany in September 2014 in Klaipėda, the project informed about case study outcomes and recommendations for an improved spawning ground management in the southern Baltic. Furthermore, the project Herring contributed to raise the awareness in the general public. People in the project started to exchange best practices, to learn from each other, to learn from the case studies, and to develop recommendations for the southern Baltic area.
A good complement to the current monitoring program would be to monitor the larvae production and also the coastal habitat for fish, because that is currently not done to the extent that is desirable.
In the Greifswald Bay, such a larvae study has already been established. However, not all human activities have negative effects on the spawning grounds.
It was the case with fishery in the Vistula Lagoon because of once the influence was relatively low because of the intensity of the fisheries, but also, for example, because of the equipment they use. If they are using bottom trawl, it's going to be like disaster for herring spawning sites. But if they use what they use, which is gill nets, fake nets, it's not really that important.
The fisheries cooperative Peenemündung Freest participated in the German case study.
Die größte Quote, die wir haben, ist der Hering. Und wir fangen in der Frühjahrsheringssaison fast 3000 Tonnen. Für uns ist der Hering der Brotfisch überhaupt. Wir sind natürlich interessiert, dass das Laichgebiet der Greifswalder Bodden erhalten bleibt. Wir sind ja Profiteure von diesem Laichgebiet. Da muss es natürlich ein bestimmtes Küstenmanagement geben.
To improve a sustainable coastal management, the project suggests to raise the awareness of the importance of spawning grounds in the Southern Baltic Sea, to initiate spatiotemporal monitoring of coastal spawning grounds in the region, to include the ecological function of spawning grounds into regulations and marine spatial planning, and to avoid or reduce negative human impacts on underwater plants as early as possible.
Wir möchten natürlich, dass der Heringsbestand also wieder in gute Bahnen kommt und wir natürlich auch in der Zukunft vom Laichgebiet profitieren können.